Before the fall, there was certainty. Before the tragedy, there was domination. Before football learned that perfection is often punished, there existed a team that walked onto the pitch believing defeat was something that happened only to others. For nearly 4 years, the Hungarian national team did not lose a single match. Not in friendlies, not in international tournaments, not under pressure, not when it mattered. They weren't surviving opponents. They were dismantling them. Every match followed the same silent script. Hungary would take control. Opponents would chase shadows, and by the time they understood what was happening, the result was already decided. This wasn't arrogance spoken aloud. It was arrogance built on proof. In post-war Europe, football was more than a sport. It was identity, pride, reconstruction. Stadiums became places where nations tried to remember who they were before everything collapsed, and Hungary turned those stadiums into theaters of superiority. They were called the mighty Magyars. But names cannot explain fear. Fear lived in the way defenders hesitated, in the way midfields collapsed under pressure, in the way goalkeepers prayed instead of positioned themselves. Hungary did not play football the way others understood it. They rejected rigid formations, ignored positional obedience, and treated the pitch not as a set of lines, but as a living space to be manipulated. Their system was fluid, constantly shifting, intellectually violent. The center forward dropped deep. The midfield surged forward. Defenders advanced with confidence instead of retreating in panic. No one knew who to mark. No one knew where danger would emerge. And that uncertainty was fatal. At the heart of this revolution stood Ferenc Puskás, short, stocky, low center of gravity. Puskás did not fit the heroic mold of the era, but his left foot rewrote it. He struck the ball with precision that felt deliberate, almost insulting. His movement was economical, his decisions ruthless. But Puskás was not the system. Hungary was never about a single star. It was about synchronizing, about intelligence shared across 11 minds operating as one. Their passes were not reactions. They were predictions. Their movements were not improvised. They were understood. Football, as the world knew it, was being quietly outpaced. The moment that shattered illusion forever came in London, November 1953. Wembley Stadium. England, the birthplace of football, undefeated at home against foreign opposition, confident in the belief that tradition alone would protect them. It didn't. Hungary dismantled England 6-3 in what felt less like a match and more like a public demonstration. English defenders were dragged out of position, midfielders overwhelmed, goalkeepers abandoned. The crowd watched in stunned silence as their own sport evolved beyond them. Months later, Hungary repeated the humiliation in Budapest 7-1. There was no debate left. This was not a great team. This was a new reality. By the time the 1954 World Cup arrived in Switzerland, Hungary was no longer chasing history. History was waiting for them. Unbeaten in 31 matches, Olympic champions, technically superior, mentally unshakable, or so it appeared. Their group stage clash with West Germany felt like a formality. Germany, rebuilding itself on and off the pitch, stood no chance against this machine. The result was brutal. 8-3. 8 goals. A message, not a scoreline. The football world began to speak in absolutes. The trophy seemed inevitable. The final, a coronation. And that was the most dangerous moment of all. Because somewhere between domination and destiny, something subtle shifted. Hungary stopped proving themselves and started expecting outcomes. The hunger that had driven their rise began to transform into certainty. Meanwhile, Germany did something Hungary had not needed to do in years. They learned, they observed, they adjusted, they waited. The final was approaching, and Hungary, for the first time in 4 years, was walking toward a match believing it could not be lost. July 4th, 1954, Bern, Switzerland. The rain began hours before kickoff. Not dramatic at first, just persistent, soaking the ground slowly, changing the character of the pitch minute by minute. By the time the players stepped onto the grass of the Wankdorf Stadium, the surface no longer belonged to football built on speed, sharp angles, and precision. It belonged to survival. Hungary walked onto that pitch carrying the weight of inevitability. They were not chasing history. History had been following them for years. Every journalist, every fan, Every opponent already spoke of them as champions before the match had even begun. This was supposed to be a ceremony, a coronation, a confirmation. Across the tunnel stood West Germany, disciplined, underestimated, and still living in the shadow of humiliation. Days earlier, Hungary had destroyed them 8-3, a result so brutal that many questioned why this final was even necessary. The finals do not care about logic. They care about nerves. From the opening whistle, Hungary imposed its will. The movement was familiar, the patterns recognizable. The rain slowed the game, but it did not immediately disrupt their control. They circulated the ball patiently, stretching the German shape, forcing mistakes. Then came the breakthrough. Hungary scored, the net moved, the stadium reacted, the script held. Minutes later, Hungary struck again, 2-0. At that moment, it felt over. The dynasty had arrived exactly as predicted. Players exchanged looks not of relief, but of confirmation. This was happening. This was destiny. But something subtle changed after that second goal. Hungary did not push for a third with the same hunger. The urgency softened. The rhythm slowed. Possession became comfort rather than weapon. And Germany noticed. Germany had learned from humiliation. They had studied Hungary's movements, their rotations, their vulnerabilities, and most importantly, they understood the conditions. The rain was no longer a detail, it was an equalizer. Germany simplified, they stopped chasing shadows and started closing spaces. They abandoned beauty and embraced necessity. Long balls replaced intricate build-up, physical duels replaced positional battles, and then Germany scored 2-1. It was not a beautiful goal, it was not symbolic, it was functional. But it changed everything. Hungary felt it immediately. The certainty that had carried them through 4 years cracked, just slightly, but enough. For the first time in years, they were no longer dictating reality, they were reacting to it. Germany pressed again, 2-2. Now the match belonged to psychology. Hungary had not been here before. They had not needed emotional resilience in years. Their dominance had insulated them from doubt. Now doubt entered quietly, but it spread quickly. The rain intensified, the pitch grew heavier, Hungary's passing lanes narrowed, the space they once created effortlessly now required force. Germany, meanwhile, grew stronger. They suffered, they endured, they believed, and belief in football is contagious. Then came the moment that rewrote everything. Germany attacked down the right, the ball moved into the Hungarian box, a scramble, a shot, 3-2. The stadium erupted, but Hungary froze. This was not part of the plan. This was not how the story was supposed to go. The greatest team in the world was losing, not because they were outplayed, but because they were outlet. What followed was desperation disguised as control. Hungary attacked relentlessly. They pushed higher, risked more, exposed themselves. Passes were still intelligent, but rushed. Movements still fluid, but strained. Time became an enemy. Every minute that passed without a goal tightened the pressure. Every missed chance deepened disbelief. The rain soaked through jerseys, through boots, through confidence. And then, finally, salvation seemed to arrive. Ferenc Puskás received the ball. He struck, he scored. For a heartbeat, the world corrected itself. But football is cruel. The referee's whistle pierced the moment. The flag was raised. Offside. The goal did not count. There was no explosion of anger. No dramatic collapse. Just a collective realization that something precious had slipped away. Hungary protested. The crowd reacted. But nothing changed. As the final minutes drained away, the attacks grew more frantic. Structure gave way to instinct. Intelligence gave way to hope. And hope was not enough. When the final whistle blew, history closed the door. Germany celebrated a miracle. Hungary stood still because they understood something before anyone else did. This was not just a lost final. This was the end of an era. The defeat followed them home. The aura vanished. The fear they once inspired disappeared overnight. Opponents no longer arrived defeated, they arrived believing. And then the world outside football collapsed as well. Political pressure intensified. The Hungarian Revolution erupted. Stability dissolved. Players fled the country. Teammates became strangers. The system that required unity shattered under reality. The mighty Magyars never returned. There was no redemption arc. No second chance. No delayed triumph. Just memory and influence. Because while Hungary never lifted the World Cup, their ideas survived them. Their vision traveled across borders, across decades. Coaches studied them. Teams borrowed from them. Philosophies evolved from them. They were first, and football punished them for it. Some teams are remembered for trophies. Others are remembered for transformation. Hungary did both, but history only recorded one. On that rain-soaked afternoon in Bern, perfection did not lose to superiority. Ite losci to conditions, to reality. And football, faithful to its nature, chose tragedy.